The story begins in London in 1921, after the First World War and influenza pandemic. People are broken by grief, and frauds use this pain to fool them with spirits and mediums. Florence Cathcart is a writer and paranormal debunker. She exposes people who use ghosts. Florence does not believe in ghosts, but her lover died in the war, and she regrets that she could not clear something important with him. She once went to mediums, hoping to speak to him again, but then chose to expose them. One night, Florence attends a spiritual meeting. A dead crow is placed under glass. An old man moves his hands over it, and everyone chants. Soon, the crow seems to rot. Worms appear, noses bleed, and the medium says the spirit has chosen Dorothy. Dorothy sees her dead daughter's face inside the glass, but Florence exposes the trick and proves it was fraud. The police arrest the mediums. Still, Dorothy slaps Florence because that lie gave her comfort. Florence becomes quiet, understanding her pain. Florence meets Robert Mallory, a history master at Rookford boarding school in Cumbria. She signs her book, thinking he is a fan, but Robert says he did not like her writing. He explains that children have seen a dead child's ghost, and one student has died. Florence says ghosts do not exist, but Robert shows a letter and clipping. Rookford was once a private house where, according to rumor, a child was murdered. No record was found because an important family lived there, and the case was buried. 3 weeks earlier, Walter Portman died after seeing that child. Florence asks how Walter knew the child's face. Robert shows old photos. In one from 18 years ago, a blurry child stands behind the students. Florence calls it a prank or camera exposure, but Robert shows later photos with the same blurry child. He admits a student could have run behind the line, then shows a recent photo where the same figure stands in a school window. Florence blames light, shadow, imagination, or camera tricks. Robert says the children are terrified. Many Rookford boys live far from home, almost like orphans, with no one to share their pain. He reads a quote from her book about childhood fear and trauma. This touches Florence's painful past, so she tells him to leave. Robert says he is staying at the Wellington Hotel. Later, Florence cannot stop thinking about the children. She packs and goes to Rookford. The school looks huge, old, and silent. Outside, Edward Judd receives her strangely, and Robert's behavior around him shows old tension. Inside, Robert introduces Florence to Maud Hill, whom the children call Ma. Maud has read Florence's book and keeps it beside the Bible. She has worked there for years, knows every corner, does not believe in ghosts, and wants Florence to remove fear from the children's hearts. Maud is caring, but there is strange depth in her eyes. Florence notices young Tom standing there at a distance, staring as if he knows her. She greets him, but Maud sends him away. Robert introduces Florence to Reverend Hugh Purslow, a senior authority. He welcomes her formally and asks Robert to show her around, including the dining room. In the dining hall, Florence sees one boy sit down and the others immediately leave. She realizes the school is not only dealing with ghost fear, bullying and isolation are also hurting the children, and some boys feel unwanted. Robert wants to show where Walter Portman was found, but Florence wants every place where Walter or others saw the ghost. He takes her to the old classroom where most sightings happened. Walter's body was found outside, near the terrace, and now many boys fear entering. Near the terrace, Florence finds a small toy eye and asks Maud if Walter had a teddy bear. Maud says yes and brings it. Florence notices Edward Judd. Robert says Edward faked a limp to avoid war, so he considers him a coward. Maud returns with the bear. Florence asks if it was on Walter's bed that morning, and Maud says yes. Robert leaves, looking unwell. In the West Dormitory, Florence places the bear on Walter's bed. Maud says Walter had asthma, so boys called him Wheezy Walter. Any different child becomes a target, and Walter was alone. Florence enters Malcolm McNair's classroom. Malcolm looks sick and keeps coughing, but remains strict. When Julian Dowden laughs, Malcolm calls him forward and hits him. Florence sees fear worsened by the harsh environment. Maud tells the students Florence has come to help. Florence asks who spoke to Walter about the ghost and who saw it. Everyone is silent. Then Julian says he saw it in the upper corridor with a blurry, twisted, painful face, as if the child was trapped in suffering. The boys beg Florence to remove it. Florence realizes that, real or not, their fear is real. Florence sets cameras, sound recorders, magnetic field instruments, wires and chemicals in the rooms and corridors. If someone is pretending to be a ghost, a camera, trap, or footprint will catch him. Tom asks Maud if Florence will kill the ghost. Maud says she will catch boys pretending to be ghosts. That night, through a wall hole, Florence sees Robert's old wound. He cuts into his skin with a blade, biting a towel to stop himself screaming. Florence sees his hidden physical and emotional pain. Suddenly, her trap alarm rings. Florence runs out and finds a new mark. She follows it downstairs, where water and shattered glass show someone passed. She checks a dusty door handle, finds fresh fingerprints, and smells resin. Something moves behind her. Florence chases a childlike shadow toward the stairs. Footprints lead to the housemaid's room. Inside, a voice says, "Stay still." Florence finds the same mask used to pretend to be the ghost. Florence comes downstairs and sees another boy going toward a room. She follows him and finds a dollhouse, a miniature copy of the school. She opens its door, notices nothing unusual, but before closing it, she briefly sees a ghostly child inside. The child disappears. Florence tries to calm herself, because everything must have logic. Then she sees a man in the doorway holding a gun. She runs toward him, but Robert appears and says he heard the bells and came to check. The next morning, Florence gathers the boys and sprays water on their feet. The chemical she left on the floor will react if anyone stepped on it. When she sprays Victor Perry's feet, the reaction appears. Everyone realizes Victor was the fake ghost. Florence explains he used a mask and white cloth. Florence says Walter may have gone to the bathroom without glasses, seen a blurry figure, panicked, and suffered a fatal asthma attack. But Victor denies scaring Walter, saying Walter was his friend. He admits trying to scare Florence. When Robert asks who told him, Victor looks fearfully at Julian. Florence realizes Victor was not alone. Purslow questions Julian, but he denies everything. Malcolm moves to punish him, but Florence stops him, saying he has damaged these boys enough. Then she smells the same resin-like balsam on Malcolm noticed on the handle and window lock. Florence says the scent was also on Walter's teddy bear, whose missing eye was found where Walter died. This means Malcolm was there. She asks if Walter came to him frightened, if Malcolm took his bear and left him alone in the dark. Malcolm breaks down. Walter had come crying, saying he saw the ghost. Instead of comforting him, Malcolm tried to make him face fear. He says Walter was alive when he left. Florence says fear can kill, especially a child with asthma. Purslow orders Malcolm to leave. Florence believes the case is almost solved. Boy's prank, school fear, and Malcolm's cruelty. But something still feels hidden. The boys improve, yet Florence is not satisfied. Robert says truth has a price and saw something change inside her when she proved the ghost fake. Florence says she only showed them there was no reason to fear, but emptiness remains. Later, Florence meets Judd in the forest. He insults her, saying she will write about another case. Florence says she wondered if anyone understood Walter's pain. Judd warns her to be careful of the living, then the dead. Holidays begin, and the school becomes empty. Near the lake, Florence drops her late fiancé's cigarette case into the water. Reaching for it, she feels a hand under the surface, then falls in, panicking. Robert pulls her out. Later, by the fire, Florence notices Tom is still there. He says his parents are in India. His words remind Florence of childhood. In Africa, a lion attacked, her parents died. Villagers saved her, and the marks remain on her shoulder. Maud hears everything and sends Tom away. Florence says the lake incident was only an accident, but Maud does not believe her. She asks how Florence could do that to herself. Florence avoids the topic, uncomfortable because Maud understands her pain. Maud asks her to stay, but Florence says her work is finished. Still, deep inside, she knows the lake was not imagination. She has exposed the boy's ghost and Malcolm, yet now something is happening, and science has no answer. That night, Florence is bathing when she hears a faint sound from the dormitory wall. She thinks Robert may be watching through the same hole she used earlier. She moves closer and softly says, "I know you are there. Please, don't go." But Robert is not there. A distorted child's ghost stands there, blurry and strange, exactly like the boys described. Terrified, Florence rushes into the dormitory. A shadow runs away, and she chases it through the empty school. The figure leads her to the room with the dollhouse. This time, figurines recreate every scene since Florence arrived. Her investigation, private moments, and Florence looking at Robert through the wall hole. Something had been watching when she thought she was alone. Then she sees a small boy behind her figurine. She turns around, but the room is empty. Her logic is shaken, and childhood trauma awakens. Later, Florence tells Robert to reset the equipment. Robert says the culprit was found, but Florence says she came to investigate a phenomenon. She found human explanations for Walter's death and the prank, but what is happening inside has no answer. Maybe it is collective delusion, or maybe her own mind. She asks about the original murder. Robert says records are incomplete, but Florence feels truth may be hidden. Then a differential thermometer shows one corridor side has become colder. Florence checks the wall, remembering old houses had hidden cupboards for maids, and finds one. Inside is an old rabbit-headed doll. It plays the rhyme, "Ladybird, ladybird, fly away home. Your house is on fire, your children are gone, all except one." The tune feels familiar. Florence orders Robert to lock the house. Tom hears the rhyme and becomes pale, saying he will come to take him or catch him. Florence promises to protect him. Now the case changes. The house seems to hide something older and more dangerous than Victor or Malcolm. Later, Tom asks to sit with Florence quietly. He says he gets scolded for talking too much. Florence encourages him. Tom speaks about make-believe friends, then says Florence once had a real friend who is gone. Florence admits she loved her fiancé. She wrote him a cruel letter during the war, saying she could not marry him and no longer loved him, and soon after, he died. Tom says she loved him and wants him back. His words hit her. Maud sends Tom away. Before leaving, Tom kisses Florence's forehead, thanks her, and calls her Mousie. Florence becomes emotional. Maud says no place understands loneliness better than Rookford. Florence is alone with guilt, Robert with war trauma, Maud with hidden pain, and Tom with loneliness. Later, Florence goes to Robert. He says she is torturing herself and asks if she came here to prove her lover is gone. Florence tells him to stop preaching because he keeps scratching his wound, punishing himself with guilt. Florence breaks down. She admits she is afraid, cannot live with this fear, and sometimes feels it might be better if she died. Robert understands her pain comes from her past and guilt. Later, Florence checks her magnetic field detectors. The arrows move, and while she fixes one, she senses a small child behind her. Suddenly, every arrow points at Florence as if the signal is coming from her. Then she hears Tom's voice upstairs, calling her Mousie, but Tom is with Maud. A ball rolls down the stairs, and Florence hears laughter. She runs upstairs and sees a man with a shotgun moving toward her. Her feet catch in the wires, and the camera traps take photos. When Maud and Tom arrive, Florence blames Tom, calling him cruel and horrid. Hurt, Tom says he hates her and runs away. Maud says she thought Florence was kind, but now nothing is left inside her. Florence develops the photos, expecting the shotgun man, but instead they show a child's spirit. Her scientific explanation breaks. Robert watches as hidden memories awaken. Florence and Robert grow closer, searching for comfort, while Judd sees them and becomes jealous. After Robert leaves, Florence sees a face in the pillow and tears it apart. Inside, she finds her fiancé's lighter. At the same time, Robert's door closes by itself and will not open. Later, near the lake, Judd follows Florence and tries to force himself on her. The child spirit appears, terrifying Judd. Florence defends herself and hits him with his own gun. During the struggle, Judd dies. Florence tells Robert, who asks Maud for a blanket and bath, then handles the body. Florence tells Robert not to tell Tom, but Robert says there is no child here, only Florence, Robert, and Maud. Florence realizes Tom is the child spirit. She hears a classroom sound and finds written on the board, "All the children are gone except one." Tom's voice comes from the cupboard, leading her through a secret passage to the dollhouse room. Tom appears and says he did not scare Walter on purpose. Florence believes him. His twisted form slowly becomes normal. Tom says he cannot force people to see him. Florence understands Walter needed a friend, and Tom needed one too. Tom says Florence must see why the rhyme frightened him. He calls her mousy, breaking something inside her. Florence looks into the dollhouse and remembers Rookford was once her family home. The shotgun man was her father, a violent man who wanted a son and resented Florence and her mother. Florence remembers Tom was her father's illegitimate son. Her father had an affair with Maud, making Tom her half-brother. On that tragic day, Florence's parents argued violently. Her father shot her mother. Florence tried to help, but he stopped her. She ran, hearing her mother tell her to run, and hid with Tom inside the cupboard. At first, he could not find them, but the rabbit doll played "Ladybird, Ladybird, Fly Away Home." The sound revealed them. He fired. The bullet grazed Florence's shoulder, but hit Tom in the chest, killing him. This is why Tom feared the rhyme. Then her father shot himself. Florence lost her mother, Tom, and father in one day. Her mind buried the trauma and created a false memory of a lion attack in Africa. Her shoulder mark was a bullet, not claws. Florence denied ghosts because the first ghost she denied was her own past. Maud says Tom felt Florence immediately. He was lonely and missed his sister, so Maud used Robert to bring Florence back. Robert admits he buried Judd and is haunted by war guilt. Maud brings Florence a drink. She says Tom needs a companion and asks Florence to stay forever. Florence feels dizzy and realizes Maud poisoned her. Maud also took poison and removed the medicine. Florence tells Tom she suffered after losing him, but dying now will not bring peace. She promises to return when the right time comes. But now she must live. Tom brings medicine. Florence survives, and Tom hugs her. Days later, children return to Rookwood. Florence has faced trauma and no longer dismisses ghosts as fraud. Some adults do not notice her, making the ending ambiguous, but Victor and Robert see her. Florence says not seeing ghosts does not mean forgetting them. She leaves with quiet peace. Tom remains, Maud's obsession ends, and Florence moves toward life. The awakening becomes a story of trauma, loneliness, guilt, and acceptance. Florence finally faces her past and learns some spirits stay waiting for someone they love.